What's good, YouTube? As we all know, the keyless entry on the driver's side door doesn't work, no matter how many times I click on it. It just will not work. So here's what we're gonna do. We are going to be installing a new button. And to do that, we're gonna need tools. Here's a list of the tools you're gonna need. You'll need a socket set, a crimper set, one that has a crimper, and also the butt splice connectors. This particular brand has a bunch of heat shrink butt connectors. They're really good. I'll post a bunch of the links to Amazon on my description, so you guys can take a look at that if you want to. But yeah, you also need a wire stripper. This one's pretty good. It's a Klein tool. You'll need wire cutters, a heat gun. You'll need a flathead, and also a Phillips head screwdriver and a pry tool. You could interchange the pry tool with the flathead, but if you want all three of them, just go for it. You're also gonna need some gloves. You gotta stay safe out here. And that's it, really. Let's get to it. First things first, you wanna take off that little rubber seal there using a pry tool or a flathead screwdriver. When you take that off, it exposes the screw that holds the key lock chamber on the door handle. You're gonna want to loosen that in order to get access to the door handle itself. Speaking of door handle, this is the new button I'll be replacing the old one with. It's super cheap and it only costs like 30 bucks on eBay, and that's 30 Canadian. To give you a visual idea of what I mean, in order to take off that handle, you're gonna need to loosen the key lock chamber as they're both connected or close together. You're not gonna be able to pull the handle free unless you loosen that key lock chamber and push it to the side. So what you want to do is pop that plastic seal off to the side. I use the flathead. You can use a pry tool if you want to, whatever floats your boat. But once it's off, now you can get to business. The screw, or should I say bolt, that's used to hold the key lock chamber is a T30 bolt. And you're going to need to use either a T30 Torx bit or a hex Allen bit. In this case, I used a hex Allen bit to loosen the screw because I didn't have anything, or I didn't have an extension skinny enough to pass through with my T30 Torx bit. So I had to improvise, and the hex Allen bit actually works pretty good. So remember that in case you have any other things that you need a T30 Torx bit for, but you might not have one readily available. Once that's been loosened, now you have access to jimmy out the key lock chamber, and you should be able to pull free the handle just like I just did over there, and I'll give you a better look. But essentially, this is what it should look like once you've done everything correctly. Also, make sure you're taking care when you're yanking all this stuff, because you don't want to dig yourself into a bigger hole just because you wanted to do a minor repair. I've learned that the hard way in previous times, and it's just not fun. Once you've loosened everything, you'll see two screws on the door handle itself, and just take those out. And that gives you access to kind of pry out the, I don't know how to describe it. Like there's a underneath and there's a top of the door handle, and you need to pull them apart in order to get access to the wiring for the button. And that's what you see me taking out over here. I'm taking out the bolts or screws in order to free it up. Bear in mind that once you take them off, there's, I don't know if it's like sealant or glue that is in between those two panels or two plastic bits. So when you're pulling it out, just know you have to be somewhat gentle, but also know that you have to put in quite a lot of force to get them to separate. As you can see, I was able to get them to separate. And once you get them separated, you should be able to see the white wiring from the interior to the button that's on the door handle. The type of wire that's used, I believe, is around 18 to 22 gauge. I'm not sure exactly which one, but the butt splices that you will use is 18 to 22 gauge, and those are the red ones. Make sure they're the red ones. Don't use bigger ones unless they might not hold properly. You want to use the right type of connectors for the wire. Once you're ready to cut, just get your wire cutters and make sure to give yourself enough wire to play around with for your splice. Once you're good with the length of wire, you can now go ahead and make your cut. Once you've cut your wire, now it's time to strip them back using the wire strippers. Nothing too crazy. Now this will vary depending on the type of stripper that you have, but for the Klein Tools stripper that I'm using, it has specific labeled slots that you can put in the specific gauge of wire, and it should just strip the wire and you shouldn't have any difficulties. It's gonna strip the sheathing back and you'll have your exposed copper. What you're seeing here is me doing some practice cuts. You don't have to do this. I just like to be thorough and make sure that the slots that I'm using on the wire stripper actually cut my wire properly. Once you've made sure that the wire stripper makes accurate strips, now you can go ahead and strip the wire that's coming directly from the car, in this case the G37. When you're stripping your wires, you want to make sure that you have about 1/4 of an inch of exposed copper. And in centimeters, I think that's like 0.6 or 0.7 of a centimeter. And you want this to be this way because you don't want to have too much copper, because when you crimp, it might not be strong enough, and you don't want to have too little unless you're going to be pinching the sheath of the wire. If you don't have any measuring tools for reference, you can use the wiring that comes with the button. They kind of made incisions, as you see there, for the length of copper that you should have. So use that as a reference point. When you're ready to start crimping, you'll see that there's a red dot on the crimper, and that's the slot that you want to use for those red butt splice connectors. Someone once told me that I had OCD, and honestly, after looking at the footage for the crimping of this particular wire, I definitely believe them. Like, I honestly didn't have to reseat the butt splice connector that many times, but make sure that it's seated properly. And then once you make your crimp, just do a tug test and make sure that it's tight and it doesn't pull off, because you want to make sure that your connection is good. That and all will just make sure that if, let's say, you put everything together, it's not gonna come off and you don't have to redo the whole process. For a general rule of thumb, just make sure to do a tuck test. If you're doing any crimping, do a tuck test. It makes your life way easier, because at least you have the peace of mind that it's on properly and it's nice and tight. Get your other butt splice and do the same thing to the other wire. Make sure you crimp it. Make sure it's seated properly. make sure you do a tug test. Once you've completed that step, now it's time to connect the new button to those butt splice connections that you just made. You don't have to worry about polarity sensitivity with these connections, although it is DC and they're drawing 12 volts DC from the battery. Because the exterior door handle request buttons are not polarity sensitive and are just mechanical switches that complete a circuit to ground, it doesn't matter which two wires connect to which pin. So you don't have to test for which one's positive and negative. They'll work fine. Just connect them anyhow and you should be good. They'll function either way. Once you've connected everything back together and replaced the old button with the new one, make sure to do a tug test. I'm not going to drop that. Make sure to do a tug test. Make sure everything is connected properly. And then now you should be ready to apply heat with your heat gun. The good thing about these butt splice connectors is the fact that they're heat shrink connectors. And when you heat them up, they'll be able to provide a good seal to the wires. Once you've applied heat with your heat gun and they've cooled down, put everything back together and your door handle should be working as intended. If this video was useful to you in any way, don't forget to like and subscribe. Hope you have a great day. God bless.